Hey, what's going on everyone? Greg here, and this is the iPhone 11 Pro Max. Now, this was supposed to be the most boring smartphone of the year. Well, that is if you believe clickbaity YouTube video titles that are talking about a phone that wasn't even released yet. However, after spending a week with the iPhone 11 Pro Max, I can tell you the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So let's start with the design of the iPhone 11 Pro Max, because there are a lot of similarities to last year's XS Max. It seems like Apple is focused on a 3-year design cycle for their smartphones. Much like the iPhone 7, 6S, and 6 all shared similar bodies, the same can be said for the iPhone 10, XS, and now the iPhone 11 Pro and Pro Max. That means at first glance, you're getting an almost identical design on the front of the phone. Yes, it still has a notch, and yes, it still has the overall same shape as the iPhone XS. However, this time, it's also a little bit thicker and also a little bit heavier in the hand now, weighing 226 grams for the iPhone 11 Pro compared to 208 grams for the iPhone XS Max. And yes, you can feel the difference when picking it up for the first time. By now I've gotten used to the weight difference and it doesn't really bother me, but if you want the lightest smartphone possible, this certainly is not it. Now, despite looking similar, there's a few design changes with the iPhone 11 Pro. The first is it now comes in a new midnight green color option. It's quite subtle in person, and it's certainly a unique look for the brand new iPhone. Now, there are two bigger design changes to this year's iPhone 11 Pro, and that comes in two forms. The first is a bigger square camera bump on the back that now houses 3 lenses, but we'll talk about those more in the camera section of the video. The second change is the brand new frosted glass finish on the back of the phone. This new matte finish feels softer to the touch, and I like it a lot better than the traditional cold glass feel of the previous XS. And even though it is a matte finish, it can still feel slippery at times in the hands. The greatest part about this new matte finish is that it does not show off fingerprints as much as the glossy backs on previous iPhones and the brand new iPhone 11. Furthermore, Apple is claiming that this iPhone's new glass is the most durable and strongest glass ever in a phone, and that's coupled with increased water resistance, IP68 rated, and that can survive up to 4 meters of submersion for 30 minutes. Theoretically, this makes it the most durable iPhone yet, and while I haven't had any issues, I'm also not throwing my phone against concrete floors to test Apple's claims. Let's just say it's still glass, and no matter how strong it is, if dropped at the right angle, it can still break. Which is probably why you'll want to put a case on your phone, and that brings us to our sponsor for this video, ESR. ESR has some really cool cases to put on your iPhone 11 Pro. One of them they sent over is called the Mimic Tempered Glass Case. So it's giving you that harder glass kind of premium feel even with a case on, but on the side of it, it still also has flexible rubber sides, so it fits perfectly on the phone, so things like the volume buttons are still easy to press. And that rubber bumper solves the slippery feeling of the stainless steel sides. And it will help you protect your $1,000 phone if it does drop. Also, ESR sent over a metal kickstand case, which surprised me just how super lightweight this design was with the included kickstand. The kickstand is made out of metal too, so it's super sturdy whenever you want to set it down, so you can take advantage of that giant 6.5-inch OLED display goodness and prop this up whenever you want to watch a movie. And when you're done, it just folds back into the case and feels like any other normal case. The best part is both of these are clear cases, so you can still show off your brand new midnight green iPhone 11 Pro in all of its glory. Also, be sure to check out the code in the description to get 40% off these cases, and thank you so much to ESR for sponsoring this video. So let's talk a little bit more about the display on the iPhone 11 Pro Max. It has a 6.5-inch OLED display with a resolution of 2688 by 1242 for an overall 458 pixels per inch. At first glance, you might think these are the same displays as last year. However, there are quite a few differences here. But do you want the good news first or the bad news first? Well, there's only one bit of bad news, so let's start with that, and that is the loss of 3D touch functionality on this year's phones. So yes, the iPhone XS actually has an advantage over this new iPhone 11 Pro. Now, Apple doesn't just leave you without any other alternative. They're giving you haptic touch, and with iOS 13, it gets a lot better and gets you about 90% of the way there to 3D touch functionality. However, 3D touch could be activated ever so slightly faster and gave you more control on pressing into icons, moving the cursor around with the keyboard, or peeking and popping into content. If you're used to 3D touch, you'll eventually get used to the haptic touch system, but it's going to take your brain just a little while to adjust. Now on to the good news. Despite losing 3D touch, everything else about the display is an upgrade. Apple is calling this the Super Retina XDR display. And what's so super about this display? Well, for one, it has increased contrast ratio of 2 million to 1 compared to the XS's contrast ratio of 1 million to 1. The contrast ratio improvement is actually noticeable. I think the area where I appreciated this the most was the slight pop it gave to black text when reading it against a white background. It also looks excellent with iOS 13's brand new dark mode. Another benefit to the Super Retina XDR display is that the iPhone 11 Pro can get significantly brighter at 800 nits for daytime viewing, which is 175 nits brighter than the iPhone XS Max. And this extra brightness is really outstanding for using this phone outside in direct sunlight. I have never used a phone before that handled direct sunlight so well, which still allowed me to view my content in higher clarity even as the sun was beating down on my phone. Now this display can get even brighter. It can get up to 1200 nits of peak brightness. However, this is only going to activate when you're watching HDR or Dolby Vision content. This 1200 nits of peak brightness really shows off what the display is capable of when watching HDR compatible movies in iTunes. Overall, all of these improvements make this the best smartphone display I've ever used, and probably the best display I've ever used, period. The display is not the only area to get upgrades this year because Apple has also upgraded the speakers. Apple is implementing a new spatial audio system that should help you locate sound in Dolby Atmos content. I'm saying should because even though these speakers to my ear sound a bit better than the XS series, I think the spatial audio effect is really hard to pick out, and I don't think it's something most users will notice. Because you really have to watch content that has Dolby audio, and if you're just watching a standard YouTube video, you're really not going to benefit from that spatial audio effect. However, these speakers still sound really, really good. They get plenty loud and have really good clarity. Alright, and what iPhone review video would be complete without talking about performance? Now this year, the iPhone 11 Pro Max is getting an upgrade to Apple's A13 Bionic chip. And if we take a look at a benchmark like Geekbench 5, we are getting a single core score of 1,333 and a multi-core score of 3,425. This is a crazy score, and for the first time ever, the iPhone 11 has a faster single-core performance than any Mac that Apple currently sells. Yes, faster than the iMac and iMac Pro in single-core performance. And yes, this is just a benchmark, but let's acknowledge for a second, even though this is just a benchmark, it doesn't have anything to do with real-world performance, let's just acknowledge this is insane. The iPhone 11 is beating my iMac in single core performance. How is this thing in my pocket? Now, in real world use, what does that mean? Well, in combination with iOS 13, which also offers other optimizations like faster app loading times, this has been the smoothest phone experience I have had yet. The A13 chip is just extending its lead, and it's hard to think what isn't possible with this iPhone. So of course, it can handle the latest games from Apple Arcade, edit photos and videos, but we've just come to expect that at this point. And at this point, with smartphones getting so powerful, we are kind of beyond the point of where these processors are really just used for rendering a video. This is something that runs the entire system on an iPhone, and it's also used for a lot more complex tasks like the computational photography aspects of this phone, which we can talk about later in the camera section. It's just ridiculous the amount of performance we are seeing with Apple's modern chips, and now they're rivaling scores on desktop class computers. However, it's not all about the hardware, there's also software that goes along with it. And this year's software is iOS 13, which brings a lot of great functionality to the iPhone 11 Pro Max, like dark mode, a swiping keyboard, a new reminders app, improvements to the Photos app, increased privacy with sign-in from Apple, 30% faster Face ID unlocking, and even some really great built-in video editing tools now available within the Photos app that's great for casual and professional users alike. And even though there are a lot of iOS 13 features and additions, which I really can't cover in this video, otherwise it'd probably be like 10 hours long, there are still a few bugs available even as of 13.1, and that's a little bit unfortunate, especially considering the very smooth launch of iOS 12 we had just last year, and that release was really focused on optimization and getting rid of bugs, so going back to a software release where there are quite a few bugs, it is a little bit jarring. But with that being said, Apple did release 13.1 very quickly, and that has overall been smoother than 13.0. So with frequent software updates, hopefully Apple can squash these bugs very quickly. All right, let's talk about the real reason a lot of people are looking at the iPhone 11 Pro, and that is the camera system. By far the biggest and most noticeable upgrade to this year's iPhone 11 Pro is the brand new triple lens camera system. Okay, in this camera housing we have a normal wide-angle lens, a 2x telephoto lens, and for the first time ever in an iPhone, an ultra-wide-angle lens. And these three camera lenses together give you immense versatility in the type of pictures you can take with your phone. The wide-angle lens is combining Apple's Smart HDR with some other improvements to how Apple's computational photography analyzes these scenes. So we are seeing a nice jump in photo quality for this year's iPhone 11 Pro. Most pictures have even exposure, increased sharpness, and enhanced dynamic range for just very pleasing photos to look at. You can even get a very good amount of natural bokeh without portrait mode just by getting close to the subject and snapping a photo. And the iPhone just does a great job overall with almost anything: architecture, landscape, skin complexions, and it really shines in difficult lighting situations with Smart HDR. The telephoto camera also gets a bit of an upgrade this year, going from an f2.4 aperture to an f2.0 aperture. This allows the lens to let in more light, and because of that, you get much better picture quality than the iPhone XS's telephoto lens. The telephoto really shines for getting pictures of animals that might run away, or for zooming in on an area that just wasn't accessible by walking. And let's talk about the newest lens to the iPhone family, the ultra-wide-angle lens. The ultra-wide-angle lens is actually probably the worst quality lens in terms of picture quality in this year's iPhone 11 Pro, and that's due to the slower 2.4 aperture. However, it is still a welcome addition that really does expand the view of what you can capture with your iPhone. The ultra-wide just gives you a perspective not possible before, and it can capture a much wider field of view in general. It's great for landscapes, architecture, or just fitting a bunch of people into a photo. It's also great in combination with Apple's new software that even when taking a normal picture, you can have the ultra-wide capture more of the photo, and from there you can edit it and crop it out to adjust the scene if you misframed it or accidentally cut someone out of the picture. Portrait mode also makes a return this year, and you can expect similar results to other years. Some portrait mode photos do a good job of blurring the background and giving you that nice artificial bokeh. And sometimes it misses and it just can't pull off edge detection, and it creates an imperfect bokeh look. A welcome addition, and something I complained about last year with the iPhone XS, is that now with the iPhone 11 Pro, you get two options for portrait mode, either a 1x or a 2x zoom, which gives you much more flexibility in your shots. Now, those camera upgrades alone would be pretty respectable for the iPhone 11 Pro this year. However, it doesn't stop there, and this is probably the biggest upgrade in terms of overall performance to this year's iPhone cameras, and that is the low light level photography you get with the brand new night mode. Now, let's be clear here. Apple was not the first to dark mode. Other Android manufacturers like Google have had it on the Pixel line for a few years now, but I think Apple has not only caught up with its night mode, I think it's stealing the show here, and it might just be the best implementation of night mode yet. It makes a night scene look like a night scene, just one that's better and more properly lit. Apple's night mode also works automatically in the camera app, so you don't have to fiddle around with any other additional settings. Just use the camera like you normally would. If the scene is dark enough, night mode will automatically turn on. If you want to go ahead and adjust some of the exposure times when that happens, you can get some limited options there, but for the most part, this is all handled automatically, and then when you go to snap the picture, You just hold the phone still for a couple of seconds and all of a sudden you have this really nice shot. And this upgrade in low light level photography, going from the XS and XR series to the iPhone 11 and iPhone 11 Pro, is literally night and day. It is by far the biggest improvement to the still photography on this year's iPhone. Night mode makes you completely rethink how you use your phone camera at night and gives you the ability to take photos that just weren't possible on last year's iPhones. Of course, not only does the iPhone 11 take amazing still photos, it also takes some pretty exceptional video. The video can max out at 4K resolution with 60 frames per second, all in extended high dynamic range. Personally, I like the 24 FPS cinematic look, and while shooting video for some upcoming reviews, I was just blown away by the quality I was getting out of this camera. The dynamic range in particular on this scene just really stood out to me. The great video quality is also combined with really good stereo microphones and a really good audio zoom feature where when you zoom in on an area, the iPhone 11 Pro will try to focus on that sound. Just listen to the increased clarity of the water pulling back against the rocks as I zoom up in this scene. Now, even though the back camera was a huge upgrade this year, you might also be surprised to know that the front camera also gets a significant upgrade as well. The front camera gets a jump in megapixels, going from 7 megapixels to 12 megapixels. The front-facing camera also has a wider angle field of view this year, which is really helpful, especially for group selfies. The front-facing video camera is also getting some improvements here as well, so now it can go up to 4K, 60 frames per second, just like the back camera. However, in that mode, it doesn't get the extended high dynamic range, and it can also shoot slow motion video, which Apple is calling slowfies. So with all of these camera features combined, as far as smartphone cameras go, this is by far the best camera I have ever used in a smartphone. I think it offers the best combination of picture and video quality, as well as some really great onboard microphones for audio. And that's all without Apple's fancy new Deep Fusion feature, which is going to combine 9 different photos together to give you a really high quality picture in challenging lighting environments. That is still not available, not even available in the betas, so we're gonna have to wait and see just how that plays out, but that could even lead to further improvements with the iPhone 11 Pro camera. Now, there's one thing I haven't mentioned yet in this video, and that's because I like to save the best for last, and that is the battery life on the iPhone 11 Pro Max. The battery life in this phone is just, and let me say it clearly, the best battery life I have ever experienced on any smartphone. I really put this phone through a stress test, never letting it get a second of rest with a mixture of either YouTube videos, audio streaming, browsing the web, and taking phone calls throughout the day, all while in an area with really bad cell reception. And I was able to make it through the day on heavy usage without the need for charging in between. If I did the same usage I did that day with my iPhone XS Max, or dare I say my beloved iPhone XR, those phones' batteries would be dead. Okay, so if you've been watching the video for this long, and if you have been, thank you, I'm sure it's going to be pretty long by this point, I'm sure you're probably going, this has been a pretty glowing review of the iPhone 11 Pro Max. There haven't been too many negatives. And are there any negatives that I should be aware of before I purchase this phone? And much like with my iPhone XS Max review of last year, there is one big negative, and that is the price. This is a very expensive phone, starting at $1,099 for a 64GB model, and I have the 256GB model, which retails for $1,249. This remains my biggest con for this year, especially with the iPhone 11, which offers a majority of the same features available at just $699. However, even though the iPhone 11 Pro Max and the iPhone XS Max share the same con, I have a different conclusion than last year. Last year, it was hard to recommend the iPhone XS Max because the iPhone XR beat it on one key important factor: battery life. Now the tables have turned a little bit. The iPhone 11 Pro Max has the best battery life you can get on an iPhone, and it also has a brighter and improved display, a different matte glass back finish, increased water resistance, and the versatility of a 3-lens camera system. So I think Phil Schiller put it kind of correctly when he said this is the iPhone for people who want the best possible iPhone experience possible. And if money is no issue, then you should definitely go for the iPhone 11 Pro Max. Because despite its high price, I have really enjoyed using this phone. All of the improvements coupled together with this phone have just made it the best possible phone experience yet. So yes, the iPhone 11 Pro Max might just be the best phone I have ever used, but there is still another phone you should consider, and of course that is the regular iPhone 11. This has a lot of the same features that the iPhone 11 Pro Max does, but at a much more affordable $699. But we still need to do a full review on the iPhone 11 before we can talk about which phone you should pick. So if you like this video, make sure you give me a like. If you want to see more from my channel, including a full review of the iPhone 11, make sure you're subscribed. As always, if you want to help the channel out in any way, make sure you check out some of the links in the description. Also, be sure to check out our sponsor for this video, ESR. They have some great cases, and there's also a promo code in the description to save 40% off any of the case orders. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Take care, everyone.